Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. This is a monthly webinar series called The Art and Science of Learning, and today's session is all about microlearning. How do we deliver just the right amount of information in just the right amount of time? My name is Audrey Morris. I have the privilege of being your host today. I am the Marketing Programs Manager here at Intellum. I'm tuning in from Costa Mesa, California, and I'm excited to introduce you all to a former colleague and friend, JJ Steele, who's tuning in all the way from New Jersey. So before we dive into today's content, I want to give you all just a few minutes of housekeeping items. So first and foremost, you'll notice that this webinar is being recorded. At the end of the presentation, we will have a dedicated time for question and answer. So if you think of a question or have a thought that you want to share with us, please submit it in the Q&A box, which is just below your video screen. If you find that the video becomes blurry at any time throughout this presentation, know that you have control over adjusting the resolution. So you can manually adjust the resolution by using the gear icon, which is also at the bottom right corner of the frame. And lastly, we welcome your feedback. These sessions are built for you. And so we want to hear whether or not what you learned today is helpful. So at the end of this session or at any time that you need to leave during this session, please feel free to go to the Rate This tab below your video screen and give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, with that, I want to turn it over to you, JJ, to say hello, introduce yourself, and jump into today's presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Audrey. I'm so thrilled to be here with all of you. Little bit about me, and please feel free to find me on LinkedIn to connect and learn a bit more about me as well. I am thankfully only one of two JJ Steeles, and as someone whose maiden name was Johnson, it's really nice to be easier to find. So please find me there. But I'm thrilled to be here with all of you on a webinar because I went to school for broadcast journalism. And so being on camera and being beamed around the globe was like sort of my dream for a very long time. And I also have a master's in educational leadership. I spent actually 15 years of my career previously in higher education, working primarily with orientation and first-year seminar programs. For fun, I actually also taught an urban hiking course in the DC area for 5 years. I know Audrey and I chatted about that. And it was during COVID that I pivoted into corporate and tech. Being in the most traditional setting of learning, right? In, a collegiate environment, a campus environment, everyone's there at the same time in the same place. I really loved the challenge of how to rethink how we always did things and leverage it in technology. And we didn't have the opportunity to be together, and how we had to teach people how to be successful in these new environments. And again, I was working with our incoming first year students and their parents, as well as the students that were going to be leading the sessions, and my colleagues and stakeholders who had never led webinars before, right? So I remember those days in early 2020 trying to do that. And that really got me to pivot into corporate and tech. And so I am in a tech space. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Quick note, you may hear a dog bark or two. I'm having a little bit of a flashback to the last time I gave a webinar styled session with an external audience back in February of 2021 for a national conference, and UPS rang my doorbell multiple times, and my one dog barked a lot. And finally, I went to go mute my sound to tell him to be quiet. As still a new webinar person, I muted my screen share and was full audio to tell the dog to be quiet. So my husband is here and on dog duty, and we have 2 dogs now. So there's double the risk here, but we'll see how we go. A little bit about where I work. So I am at Zoom Info, and in my current role, I am over our global new hire onboarding program. So I'm going to speak a lot to our onboarding use case, but as well as leading learning design and delivery primarily for our individual contributors, could be managers. We do have a team that focuses on our manager development. So some of ours is sort of broad employee learning and training. And then our team also manages our learning tech stack, which includes resource creation and curation. Zoom Info has about 3,500 employees dispersed around the globe. We have offices coast to coast in the US, Toronto, UK, India, and Israel. And we are a SaaS company, so software as a service, aka tech, but we consider ourselves a data company, and we're in the process of rebranding ourselves as the go-to-market intelligence company. But needless to say, we are a very sales heavy and customer facing organization, which, what does that mean for learning? It means we don't have a ton of time for employee learning, right? There is a lot of metrics, there's a lot of goals, there's a lot of need for folks to be available or miss trainings or do things at their own time because of the nature of our employee population. Also, just let you know, we don't have it all figured out here either. Across all of 2024, our total learning hours that came out of my shop, so I, again, am within HR, was over 25,000 hours of learning, which was, again, leadership programs, self-paced learning, live learning, third-party learning, and corporate onboarding, which made up about 5,000 hours of that 25,000. But let's boil it down a little bit more, because I just want to let you know where we are. We do some recognition of our top learners, and our top tier learners for 2024. And I say only, but maybe this is awesome. It is actually strong numbers, but just to put this in reality of the learning, at least where we are, is my top tier learners across all of 2024, on average, spent 35 hours learning across 39 days and completed 33 courses. So that is the average among just my top tier, not all folks, but the folks that were in my top tier of learners. So just realizing where we are. So that's a little bit about me, but I want to learn a little bit about you, and as much as I can in this environment. So Audrey's going to get me started with 2 poll questions that we are going to have with you. So Audrey, I will get you into the poll with us.
There we go, folks. The poll is live. So look to your screen. You'll be able to answer the poll. The question is, how familiar are you with microlearning? Familiar, very familiar, somewhat familiar? You've heard of it? Not familiar at all? Go ahead and give us your answers in the poll now.
I know it's important to kind of see where people's baselines are, so I can tailor some in either direction.
So we have a few folks answering somewhat familiar, but haven't implemented yet. Very familiar, using it regularly, and heard of it, but not sure how to use it. We'll give this about 10 more seconds. If you haven't submitted your answer, please feel free to do so now. And JJ, the majority of folks are somewhat familiar, but haven't yet implemented it.
Love to hear that. Wonderful.
Thank you all. We'll head to the next question. So same process. Next question. The question is, what's your biggest challenge in implementing microlearning? For those of you who haven't implemented it yet, if you could imagine what that challenge might look like, feel free to give us that answer. For those of you who are already engaging in microlearning, let us know what you think. So what's your biggest challenge in implementing microlearning? Is it lack of time to develop the content, low learner engagement, you're not sure how to structure microlearning, or there's difficulty in measuring its effectiveness? Feel free to give us your answers now.
Yeah, and sometimes I'm sure you're like, I'd like to hit all the buttons, and that's certainly something to think about too, because we could figure out, all right, we can make the time, but are we measuring it, or how do we structure it? But our learners aren't meeting us where we are. So certainly we understand, but sort of what's front of mind, because hopefully you'll be, extra tuned into that portion of our session today.
Awesome. Answers are flying in. Ooh, quite a mixed board here. So the greatest number of responses came into not sure how to structure microlearning. Runner up there is difficulty in measuring its effectiveness. Next in line is the lack of time to develop content. Wow, we're at about a 51% of folks saying they're not sure how to structure the microlearning. So I'm glad we're going to cover that today, JJ.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, let's get into, thank you so much again, team, for your responses. And Audrey, I think you're going to wrap up at least being on camera for the moment, and I'll see you back here for the Q&A at the end, right?
That's right. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, so we have our, goals for our session today. It's going to match a lot of what I'm hearing from all of you. I do want to be honest, though, in creating our session today, I really thought about how I could turn this session into like really living out a microlearning. But given the format and technical nuances and limitations of being in a webinar, it's a bit more traditional. But I really did bring microlearning design principles into my approach. So hopefully you'll see some of that as we go. And again, our goals are to better acquaint you with microlearning and its relevance in today's workforce. We're going to work on how to define it, identify its key advantages, boost your learning and development initiatives, best practices for creating, engaging, and effective microlearnings, and strategies to incorporate microlearnings into existing programs, right? It isn't like, here's this new thing, microlearnings, that's completely new. It's how are we going to shift what we're already doing as one of our easiest ways, least barrier to entry. And then that may open up some new ideas. And then my plan is to leave us with some time for Q&A at the end. So, $1 million question, what is a microlearning? And based off of our polls, again, you guys, some of you are very familiar, somewhat familiar. And so let's sort of make sure we're working off the same playing field. So we have our short bite-sized focused learning units, right? They're typically a short amount of time dedicated to them, 2 to 10 minutes long. And microlearnings are really a variety of formats. I know sometimes micro e-learnings might come to mind for many of us, and that is certainly a popular delivery. But microlearnings also include videos and infographics and quizzes. So really open up your mind to what you may have a preconceived notion of what a microlearning is. And it really is housed in being designed for just-in-time learning and easy retention. And so with this understanding, it should be sort of beginning to become a little clear why microlearning is gaining popularity. We have this rise of digital learning and mobile-first approaches, this increase for demand for on-the-go and flexible learning, right? I work in a global organization. Finding a common hour is very difficult to do around the globe. Usually this hour, this 11 o'clock hour does work East Coast time for a lot of our global stakeholders, but folks really want to do it on their own time. Shorter attention span, information overload. Hello, TLDR, too long, didn't read. Or I even think back to, looking for a new recipe and going to a food blogger site, and then there's like their whole life history. And then you're like, just get me to the recipe. Like, that's what I need. That's what's in it for me. And so keep these fundamentals in mind about your own experiences and how we build out what we're looking to provide. I also want to take a moment to just clarify what microlearning is not. And so some common myths and challenges is that it's just breaking up long courses. No. True microlearning focuses on solving specific problems in small doses, really getting to the heart of what we're trying to do. I remember, I'm sure, and again, I spent a lot of time in university setting thinking about how colleges would arrange classes, right? Was it the 2.5-hour once a week lecture? Was it the 2 times a week for 75 minutes? Or was it the 3 times a week for 50 minutes? And I would try to be strategic. If it was like a really hands-on like video course that I would take, then I wanted to have it once a week so I could really dive deep into the work. But if I was taking like an economics class, I wanted that chunked out. But that wasn't microlearning. It was just delivery and preferences. So let's remember that microlearning isn't just breaking up long courses. It's also not only for millennials and Gen Z. All generations benefit from bite-sized learning. And, one thing that I like to think about, sort of bringing the pop culture lens to our conversation here for a minute, is that there's been a huge rise in preference for episodic entertainment over the last several years. So people opting to watch television series over movies. And so really thinking about this episodic content, and, we're not saying, folks of a certain generation are only watching movies, right? They only like movies. They're not watching episodic television. And so this is not just for millennials and Gen Z. They may be driving some of the creativity and how we're seeing, again, TikTok and Instagram and other short form content be delivered. But for learning, it's going to benefit everybody, because a lot of the concepts associated with our cognitive load, which I'll get to in a minute, apply to all of us. And I also want to be clear that you all are not too worried that microlearning is not going to replace traditional learning. It's really meant to be complementary. So it is not replacing. But again, what is that just-in-time learning? How can we help reiterate key messaging? And so not a new concept. Maybe the word microlearning is new, but it isn't a new concept, right? We should be familiar with breaking down learning into more bite-sized pieces of information, because we know humans can only process a small amount of new information at any one time. And also keep in mind, as I reflected on this session, microlearning is maybe the latest in a long line of learning trends. And I thought back to the new, learning trends I previously learned on webinars or back at conferences. At one point, e-learnings and flipped classrooms were the latest trends. I remember the first learning the term synchronous versus asynchronous and trying to keep those straight, and how it related to hybrid learning models. And all of these things are now so familiar to us. So realize that there is going to be a learning curve for us, even as professionals and practitioners. I also want to think back real quick to being introduced to Pacha. Oh my goodness, I wrote down how to say it phonetically and I still can't do it. Pacha. So the PECHAKUCHA, which is a learning format, actually reminds us a lot of microlearning. It's a storytelling format that uses visuals to convey a message in a concise way. And I remember once we were formatting whole sessions at a conference in this Pacha style. And it's a bit more prescriptive in its format, right? Its presentations were usually made up of 20 slides, each lasting 20 seconds, for a total of 6 minutes and 40 seconds, though, which sounds like that sweet spot of learning. So let's get into why microlearning is effective. And so I mentioned the science, and I won't nerd out on science too much, but we do want to think about Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve, right? That we want smaller, frequent learning to help boost retention. And so we often start a lot of our sessions with the forgetting curve, addressing it head on with our learners and making sure that we are helping folks, reduce that. We also want to leverage spaced repetition and retrieval practice. We want to support chunking theory, right? The brain only is processing small amounts of information. And this is due to cognitive load, right? And the cognitive load theory tells us that the brain, how the brain is processing information and builds knowledge, and that the brain has a limited capacity for working memory, and that overloading it can make learning more difficult. I often refer to the new hire onboarding experience as trying to take a sip of water from a fire hose, right? You're getting your thirst quenched, but you're also getting it in your eye and up your nose and on your shirt. And it is really hard to retain that information, right? Because there is a cognitive limit, right? The maximum amount of time a person can process information at any given time. And these limits are applying to short-term, long-term, and our attention. And then a quick shout out to the 1956 research from George A. Miller on the magical number 7. And that he proposed that the average human can only hold around 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information in their short-term memory at a time. So 7 really being a magic number and how we can design our learning that way. Couple more things to touch on is learner behavior and engagement. So modern learners have shorter attention spans, right? Prefer that on-demand content. We talked about that. We want to align with mobile-first learning habits. People are checking their phone on average 58 times a day. I know my phone tells me how many times I picked it up. It is face down right now. My alerts are off, so we're good. I also have my Slack alerts off because it's so easy to get distracted. And increases in engagement and completion rates are much higher from microlearnings than traditional learnings, right? That completion rate, if it's short to begin with, I am often looking at, yes, people who start courses or come to a training, and what is the drop off there? And then ultimately, this means real business impact. Microlearning can help reduce training time and costs. And I know for my company, any moments time away from our customers is a financial cost. And so it's not about how much it costs to build the microlearnings, it's the people cost and the time cost and having these very expensive meetings or trainings. And so really reducing the training time and costs, enabling faster skill acquisition and application. So we're not waiting to, the time that works best for most people, that they can get information just as they need it so that they can acquire and apply. And again, improving performance with that just-in-time learning. So to summarize, right, for people to kind of see it in one place, the key advantages of microlearning is, improving retention and recall. That repetition in short bursts helps memory consolidation. So I'm doing a little bit of repetition right through my session to hope that you're capturing that, although we are recording the session and things will be shared out with you. We want to boost engagement. So interactive and media-rich formats help keep learners engaged. I wish I could put more polls throughout our session or have a chat going. Those are things that, again, I would like to do and often will put in my microlearnings for people to fill out, again, brief quizzes or surveys or what action are you going to take away from this? But don't worry, I have something saved for us at the end. We also want to, again, increase accessibility and flexibility. So mobile friendly and available anytime, anywhere is a key advantage of microlearning. A lot of folks who are back to commuting to offices, if you're taking public transportation, how can you use that time to do some of your learning? What are those formats? What's available? Are there already apps that maybe your learning management system has, or the delivery of your content, or you're working with a third-party content provider that is able to have that mobile-friendly accessibility. Again, supporting performance with that just-in-time learning, fitting in with the flow of work for folks. Even as I talk to my new joiners through onboarding, it's like, if you have 10 minutes, that is 10 minutes to get through, a microlearning. There is not going to be magical free time for you to learn and upskill. So where can you fit it in within your day? It's also scalable and cost effective. So, again, if you're trying to figure out, how to approach some of your, leadership, ultimately, it is going to be easier and faster to develop compared to traditional courses. And we're going to talk a little bit about AI-assisted building, again, based off of different tools that may have AI baked in, or going to whatever your generative AI platform of preference is. I know I've been using a lot of AI, including building out this session, how to keep myself focused, how I can stick to the time that we have allotted, and make sure that I'm really getting to the point for all of you. And then having a personalized learning experience. So another cool thing about AI is that it can really tailor microlearning content to individual needs. So if you're putting in various personas, or information is getting served up to folks based off of their persona or their role or their length of time at the organization, or how many folks are in their organizational chart. This is all ways to really personalize learning experiences. So these are, again, more key advantages of microlearnings. Okay, some best practices for implementing microlearnings is, keep it short and focused. One topic per module, right? We're talking about microlearning, but I've kind of broken us up into like, what is a microlearning? How are we gonna, implement it? What does it look like at my company? But what's in it for me? We say that all the time, WIIFM, like we check each other all the time. And we're talking about when it says for me, meaning the learner. AI can really do a great job getting information synthesized, breaking it down a bit more, having some existing trainings and already breaking it down further. Can we turn this into an infographic? Can we use AI to build out videos that could convey this information that might be, again, able to be absorbed? Can we create podcasts based off of docs that we're able to deliver to folks? So, multimedia, which is sort of number 2 here, yes, video, but also podcast, right? Audio is a huge way. Audio only content. Is there storytelling? Is there interactivity that we can build into it? I also love and I didn't do it too much here today, but I love using emojis and GIFs and images to communicate better than words. And another cool thing with AI is you can really prompt what type of image you're looking for or give it feedback so that an image can really communicate what you were trying to do, as opposed to, I'm searching Google Images looking for that right image to convey something, or going through a library of our internal images, or going to, our Emojipedia trying to get that content. So, we are very visual, and how can we express that better than words on a page, right? I think that's a lot of power that's coming into a lot of the video formats that we're experiencing outside of our day jobs. We also, again, want to make things really actionable as well. So real world scenarios, immediate access and application. We want to build for, reinforcement with quizzes and spaced repetition. We want to, again, mention build for mobile. Do you know right now, and you can't tell me in the chat, right? But do you know you're learning mobile, stats and access? How many folks are accessing various pieces of information via mobile? Do you know who's looking at your intranet, or maybe your team site? Who's looking at your LMS? Is your information being designed when you're publishing it? Are you looking at it in different screens to make sure that it's responsive? When it comes to video, I, again, mentioned using podcast functionality. What is audio only that we can get to folks? Is closed captioning available, right? I have, global employees, and, whether it is the rate of speech or just, the speed and terminology or accent, right? I'm originally from New York. I'm back now in the New Jersey area, but I had lived in Alabama for 4 years, and I knew certain words like coffee, people didn't know what that was, right? That was an example. I remember doing that in a Starbucks drive-thru when they didn't know what I was ordering. But are things being closed captioned? Also, speed settings. So are you able, is a learner able to slow down, right? Even if the speaker is speaking at a pace that is, quote unquote, maybe like even, maybe somebody wants that speed slowed down so they can better retain the information. I, on the other hand, love to listen to everything at like 1.25. I listen to podcasts at 1.25. As a fast talker, I feel like I'm a fast listener as well. And I get distracted by things that are super slow. So is that available for our learners as well? So a couple of examples of some formats is, again, short explainer videos, interactive quizzes, using the flashcard functionality. Are we able to gamify what we're doing? I'm a big fan of learning through infographics. I really enjoy absorbing information that way, and one pager. So when I find when information is given to me as a learner, that is really helpful. And I'll talk about where we're using that at my organization. But microlearnings can also be simulations and scenario-based learning, right? Are there decision trees? Are there interactivity with different AI bots that we're able to connect there? And so some examples of incorporating microlearning into existing programs, at least from my perspective at ZoomInfo, but there's limitless, right? And when you think about your programs, as I mentioned, a large part of my role is working with our onboarding program and just-in-time learning, both for the new hire, but also the hiring manager. I always like to say they are another huge aspect of onboarding. And some folks do onboard, roles more often than others. And other folks, I haven't onboarded somebody at the company, in a year or 2 years. I'm a new hiring manager. I've never onboarded somebody here at this company, or I'm a new manager and I've never done this. And so we really have spent a lot of time designing and working with tools to use workflows to deliver the right content at the right time to the right persona and right person. So folks that are going to be, for example, in our India or Israel offices are going to be in office on the first day. For our folks in Israel, they're in office on their first day on Sunday because that's the start of their work week. So we have different flows that are assigned. If somebody's part of our go-to-market team versus not part of our go-to-market team and they're on our HR or product teams, there's going to be different pathways and different messages that are going to be associated to both the new hire and their hiring manager. And so that just-in-time learning, that dosing, right? Not overwhelming people with information. Dosing is actually a term that I first heard from a colleague that was working in our health center at a university I was at. And you think about, you take medication in doses versus like time-released capsules, and that you have to dose for the best effectiveness given the format of the delivery, in this case, medication. But here we're talking about onboarding learning. To give you some real examples, though, of what we've done, and again, having a video background and a journalism background, I love being able to partner with our video team. And so last year, we previously had like a long list of acronyms and terminology, and we had more of like a glossary style, Zoom info acronym and terminology couple pager. And so we have a video series that we put together, and we broke it down. And so each one is about 2 minutes. So we have one that's about Zoom info products and terminology and acronyms specifically to our product suite, business acumen terminology, business acumen acronyms, sales titles and segments, software and product acronyms. And we got those filmed again around the offices in our global locations and with our employees to really, again, get under the hood and decode the terminologies and acronym. We also have recently launched, we reformatted our onboarding program to really take it from really like a 30-day program into 90 days. Now, our live training is only really happening on an employee's first week. We have about 5 hours of live training courses, but we do have, again, a number of e-learnings and just-in-time comms. And so we have been releasing what we're calling the new hire times, which is over the course of an employee's first 4 weeks, a daily newsletter. And then we are dropping it down to a weekly newsletter through weeks 5 through 10. And it's reiterating information that we have, sharing images and links and videos. We have some of our more traditional flipped classroom learnings really broken down into microlearning. So introduction, we have a session called Learning Navigator, which talks about our learning offerings at the company. So, and a segment that talks about our third-party learning provider, a segment that really walks through our LMS, our learning management system, a segment that talks about what's available on our internal talent management and development website. And so breaking that down, we have communication for collaboration that we've broken down into Slack best practices, Zoom best practices, etc. Breaking down trainings, spreading it out over time, and making sure that we are giving folks what's in it for them, what can they digest, particularly new hires who are already feeling overwhelmed. In terms of onboarding, we also, of course, use this compliance and policy training, but this also happens annually, and sometimes it's targeted to different populations. We've partnered with subject matter experts from our privacy team, AI guidelines, our global public company training. And so really working to get this content delivered in video format and or micro e-learnings have been what we've used for a number of these targeted microlearnings. Product knowledge updates. So this is largely led by our revenue enablement and customer enablement teams. And realize some of you might be, again, specifically focused on revenue enablement or customer enablement. And I think a lot of this does apply, but maybe you have to sort of, switch gears a tiny little bit based on who your audience is, whereas I'm really delivering to our internal audience. But we have some new product releases that are really exciting. And so we are getting a short video series from leadership. We had our CRO do a video, our Chief Revenue Officer, I should watch my acronyms, right, as an onboarding person, do a 4-minute video to talk a little bit more about what a new product is and what a new product is not, and had some great infographics associated with it. And so really having these short videos, which can again be shared via email or Slack or on our intranet to make sure that people are really accessing them. Soft skill development. This is a place where my team really plays a strong role as well. We have a weekly Slack newsletter that goes out to the whole company. called the weekly download. And we have a section that's dedicated every week called the TMD, Talent Management and Development Knowledge Drop. And this is where I'm putting like nano tips type videos, book bites or abstracts and summaries, giving updates around some new micro learnings that we've created or that we've curated. And I always let folks know the time associated with the training, right? Because if I don't write it, they might not know that it was only 7 minutes, right? They're going to assume that it's some 60-minute thing that they don't have time for. They're not even going to look at it. But if I can hook them with the amount of time, really leading with that in the promotion of making time. Similarly, I also use a lot of recognition from this. So I am tracking our learning statistics, both who's accessing our information through newsletters, who's going through all of our other types of learnings. I do a monthly top learner roundup and recognition. I have a Slack channel for our ZI learners where people can share what they're looking for or what they've learned or what they like. And twice a year at the midpoint and end of year, I do more formal recognition on our intranet. Similarly, I will create certificates of learning recognition where I am also including the manager of those roles as well. And I love sometimes seeing that on Slack or email, that great pride that comes from our managers. And it's great to sometimes time that, right, at annual review time or mid-year review time. Which brings me to my last point here on the existing programs. So that just-in-time sort of performance support and enablement. So a number of my colleagues within the broader talent management development team that I sit on really run our performance and feedback processes. And so what mid-year content, if we're doing a mid-year formal assessment or annual, we just wrapped up our annual assessment cycle. Yes, we do still have the traditional sort of virtual instructor-led sessions, but what do we have that's super micro? Is it maybe just navigating Workday, for example, right? And we have some quick walkthroughs for folks to know, hey, I know what I'm doing. I just don't know how to do it in the system. Is it, again, considerations to think about? Is it how to utilize one of our internal AI chatbots to, further improve your feedback that you're giving your employees? So we've developed a lot of different micro learnings in different formats for our employees as related to performance. And then just this year, I partnered with our compensation team because they run our compensation cycle as it relates to bonus as well as pay planning for the new year. And so, we have a promotion cycles as well as being informed with what your employees' comp ratio is for our hiring managers. And so while, again, they do run a more formal live session that is virtual and recorded and longer, but it's like, all right, I just want to review, like, what's that piece of comp ratio? And it's like a 7-minute e-learning, right, that we put together. And again, there's images, there's text, there's some gamification that's built in as well. So we built out, what is a promotion, comp ratio, bonus planning. So the compensation team has been really excited. There's a new partner. So just for you to already be thinking about new partnerships that you might not even consider. All right, so we're coming down at the end of my formal time, and I want to reiterate, right, as a good practitioner, our microlearning design checklist. So you want to definitely define your clear learning objectives. Focus on one key concept, skill, or problem per module, right? You want to use action-oriented objectives too. Like after this module, learners will be able to. You want to keep it short and focused, right? Aiming for 2 to 7 minutes per microlearning module, right? Remove that unnecessary detail. Stick to the essentials, right? Where can AI help you do that? Choose that right format. It is not just a micro e-learning. Video, short explainers, animation, demos, those can be like 2 to 5 minutes. Gamification, are there quizzes, flashcards, challenges to learn? Infographics, those one-pagers. Scenario-based learning, real-world problem solving. Again, chatbot-based microlearning, AI-driven learning nudges that could exist. Making it engaging and interactive. So using those visuals for storytelling, making it really real, how we can get folks involved for our employees. Again, adding decision trees or simulations. Again, other interactive elements like quizzes and gamification. Ensure that accessibility and mobile friendliness, right? We want to design content that works on any device, having that mobile first approach, using captions for videos or an alternative text for images. Reinforce that learning with spaced repetition. So I've been doing, again, some repetition, but realizing, is it something that's daily, right? Are we going to deliver microlearnings in small chunks? So as I mentioned with our onboarding, we have workflows that set up the delivery of these chunks of information. So whether it's daily or weekly, or day 16 or day 31 after someone's first day, or even in the negative, we actually use pre-boarding as well, and use what are we assigning to folks 2 weeks before they start, 5 weeks or 5 days before they start, the day before, just so they feel really good. Make sure they have the double check of links that they might need. Providing immediate application, encouraging learners to apply what they know right away. Spoiler alert, I have that coming up for us here in just a minute. And linking microlearnings to real world tasks or job aids. We talk about how do we measure success and optimize, right? Yes, tracking engagement. What are the completion rates? Are there quiz scores? Getting feedback? Are there, again, templated surveys that you're able to bake in directly through whatever format you're delivering that LMS? Or delivering that content? If it is in your LMS, we always have that as like an additional training material, is more of a standardized feedback survey. But are we getting thumbs up? Are we getting thumbs down? Are you looking at the amount of time spent? So tracking that engagement, doing both qualitative and quantitative feedback that we're asking. And so using surveys and analytics to refine content over time. We really are looking both at NPS score, we're looking at confidence score and application score related to all of our content, and reviewing that very regularly to make sure, especially what's resonating with particularly certain audiences, right? Something may really resonate well with folks in our UK office, and it isn't resonating as well in one of our other offices. And is there anything, examples or scenarios that we can better tweak or adjust? And again, deliver the right content to the right person at the right time. So here is the application stage of things, because, as a good educator, I'm compelled to assign homework, but it's really meant to help provide some immediate application of what you've just learned. So I'm going to set my timer. I'm going to give us 2 minutes for this activity. I want you to have a minute for the first two, which is going to be to think of a topic you teach or train on, and write a 1-sentence learning objective, right? Maybe it's to teach employees how to handle customer objections. Then I'm going to give you just 1 minute to write a microlearning format. So I would do a 2-minute video and a quick quiz. So no second guessing yourself. I'm going to set our timer for 2 minutes. I'm baking this in because I want you to do it. I'll let you know when 1 minute has passed. But I want you to think of a topic, write a 1-sentence learning objective, and outline a microlearning format. And I will take a sip of water. Team, only 30 seconds have passed, right? Micro, a lot can happen. Stay in the work. You still have minute 23. All right, team, if you haven't gotten to that outline portion, let's do that with our last minute. Should I play Jeopardy music? No? Yes? No? I've been watching a lot of pop culture Jeopardy on Amazon Prime. I had a friend who was on it. They did not win, but it was fun. Last 28 seconds. All right, team, that is time. Hopefully you put a little bit of time on your calendar to keep the momentum going. I do have a little bit of further learning before we get into questions. So wanting to just share, what you're interested in. There's a lot of conversation going on. So whether we have some books and research on microlearning, keeping it short and sweet, helping it stick, right? That memory and retention strategy, how to design for how people learn. Of course, podcasts, right? I want to also speak to that, whether it's the Learning Hack podcast, the Learning Science Weekly newsletter, and then Josh Burson Report has a lot of great things, as well as microlearning in the workspace. So did want to leave you with just a handful. There's so much out there, but these were just a few if, again, you're quite new to the microlearning world. And Audrey, I'd love if you could get our final poll out to the group, because I'd want to know how likely you are to implement microlearning in your organization after this session, right? How likely? You don't have to do it tomorrow, but hopefully we are moving the needle for you. So if Audrey, if you don't have that poll open, I'd love for you to do that.
The poll is live. So folks, let us know after this session, how likely are you, now that you have more information, you have concrete examples of how this has been done, how you might be able to do it, and you've had 2 minutes to think about it. 2 minutes is a long time. Let us know in the chat, in the poll. 100% very likely currently. Let's see some more responses come through. All right. We'll give this about 10 more seconds. The predominant answer is very likely. Thank you all for that. So JJ, let's transition into the Q&A. Thank you so much for just the amount of detail that you provided, the way in which you structured this to really demonstrate what microlearning can look like in these bite-sized kind of modules or segments of information that are delivered and repeated. I love that you reiterated that a few times. So I'll just get to the questions in the chat. We have a few that have come in with the time that we have remaining. If you haven't yet submitted your question, please do that now, and we'll try to get to all of them. If we don't get to all of them, we can follow up via email. So first question, when you curate a mini course, do you source videos from YouTube, or how do you do that?
Great question. Yeah, it really depends on the course. I think we do have third-party content provider information that we do tend to source from, since we are paying for that. So I always like to make sure I'm getting my ROI from that third-party source. So we do go there first, but most importantly, as opposed to pulling a full course, we really want to pull the video. What is the most important piece? Because if somebody sees a section of that video, maybe they go back and watch the whole course if it piques their curiosity. But yes, we use definitely YouTube, and especially if we're using training on certain aspects. So Slack, always going through updates. And so if Slack's YouTube channel has a really great video, then I want to pull that exact video or screen grab the portion of that video that I want to highlight to learners. So I often am going to, for example, like the YouTube or TikTok or Instagram page of a company maybe that I want to highlight, or somebody that is maybe an influencer in that space. I know even with the acronym Decoded sort of video series, I looked around TikTok and I looked around YouTube and wanted to see what was out there, looked around what other companies were doing. Comcast, for example, had a really great series for Day in the Life, which is a different video series that we also had as a part of onboarding to help people learn each other's roles. So definitely, I mean, you can go a lot of different routes with your video curation, or again, working directly with that subject matter expert in-house, or going through your video libraries that exist. We have a really great in-house tool that has a lot of our video recordings. And so I can do searches of transcript from all hands and pull things that our CEO said and be able to slice that information that I might want to drop into a microlearning.
Awesome. Thanks, JJ. And you mentioned one specific term, which is also a commonly used acronym, SME, a subject matter expert. So how often are you tapping on SMEs to develop the content that you're delivering in your microlearnings?
I am fortunate that it goes both ways. And I see my colleague Jessica actually calling out that I helped create the compensation team's microlearnings and how it's been a game changer. So a lot of times it is building that reputation that we are here to create solutions for our team. We have a learning request form that is on our internal microsite, and a lot of times folks are coming to us with, hey, we want to get this in front of this population, or we want this in onboarding, or X, Y, or Z. But yes, there are certainly times that we are going directly to our subject matter experts, our SMEs, thinking about AI. We have a lot of AI leaders within our organization, and we are really working through right now some of our AI leaders to get some microlearnings out to our employees, the importance of upskilling, staying on top of it. And we want to play with the format of how we're delivering it too. So we're going to do a lot of different ones, including have some AI video made so that I don't have to have, Russell from our chief strategy officer on video. It could be, again, his either avatar version or just another sort of image of like a cartoon to get that information to help with keeping information as evergreen as possible. And I think that's something with SMEs that I often also think about is microlearnings are meant to be just in time. So things are going to change. And so how are we keeping the content as evergreen as possible without having to do a whole re-record on something from somebody? Or if that person has left the organization, how are we able to quickly pivot that information with a new leader or avatar or character?
Amazing. Thanks for speaking to that. We have a follow-up question here from Michelle. Would you be able to share one concrete example of your favorite piece of microlearning that exists today in your programs at ZoomInfo?
Make me choose my favorite among all of my learning children.
Jessica gave you a shout out.
I know. That one. That is certainly a great one. I think for me, onboarding is such a critical moment for both our new hires and our hiring managers. And I think the microlearning is establishing your one-on-one cadence. What are those questions to ask? Keeping it super short and sweet. We both have a couple of really brief text-based and image-based e-learnings that are available. But then we also have like a one-pager. We have like literally a checklist for your first one-on-one questions to ask, getting that information out there, setting up that cadence for having those meetings, because, we do a great job of onboarding folks from a corporate perspective, but, my philosophy is it's really important to do that from the department as well. And that really makes or breaks the new hire experience. But just to give another, I guess, concrete example would be with our microlearnings. I think, yeah, to Jessica's point, with our compensation, I am a manager. I've been a manager at the company for a number of years now. I didn't mention this earlier, but I've been at ZoomInfo for over 3.5 years. And while things stay the same, things only happen sometimes once a year. Or when it comes to compensation, I have employees that are in different parts of the world. So the compensation is in their currency. And what does that look like? And so I've had a greater understanding of the process and have felt more confident going into our both bonus and planning cycles, because that's just what I need, right? I didn't need to go look in my email, find the video that the comp team sent, scroll to the right place to find the thing, right? There's so many moments where people would just abandon, the ship. My VP always says, like, how can we get the information in the fewest clicks possible? And so really thinking how we're driving that information to folks quickly. So I think the new stuff is also really exciting. So that is a favorite at the moment.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And Jessica, thanks for giving the shout out for the well-deserved work of the team here and of JJ's leadership. All right, next question, JJ. This one is a bit more specific. So do you have any data that you can speak to around microlearning, specific to certain audiences, certain formats, just general data?
Yeah, that is a tough one. I don't have any of that data right in front of me. I think what we do know in general is that the more we can put competition, gamification into e-learnings. And I don't want to connect that to sex or gender, but I think if you're more competitive by nature or engaged that way, and I think it's also difficult too, because being in a sales-driven organization, we do tend in some of those roles to sway with a heavier male population. But I think, yeah, I think ask your team, right? If you want to look at your research, look at your learner engagement, because I don't think what is happening, best practices that are out there is solving us. We really need to personalize our learning experience. I think that's so much of the work of what AI can also help us do. So if you're able to gather the information by who your learners are, if you're able to grab that field by sex or gender and get that breakdown, if there's other factors that you're interested in knowing, but what is working well at your company and what is the breakdown of your company would be my advice. So I'm sure you could find some research out there, but I would just caution you to really make sure you're focused on what your company is, because best practices are sort of going away as a term because we really need to make things hyper personalized.
Awesome. Well, then I'm not going to use the term best practices for this next question, but Sandra, thank you for your question. Sandra's wondering, what's the typical spread of new hire training? Is it that 5 to 10 week window? They are currently using or trying to get a lot of information into just a few weeks, but noticing that not all the information is sticking. So what's that kind of, and again, not to use the term best practice, but what would you say is the trend in terms of how many weeks that information is served up to the new hires?
Yeah, it is evolving. I mean, we literally just sort of refashioned our onboarding program just in February after working towards it for quite a few months, where we were delivering a lot of our content in the first 14 days. Like how quickly can we get them in and through? And then the problem is some of it is that stickiness and the overwhelm of information. And I'm speaking just from our corporate standpoint. We have, again, a lot of our folks that come in through our sales roles, which have very role specific and intense trainings. And so we look at how many hours across the board are people in live sessions, how much e-learnings are being assigned, are people able to meet the amount of learning? Because you can't just be heads down and, well, this is the corporate learning. Well, what are all the other teams doing, and looking holistically at the journey for your new hire. But for us, we really want to continue this lifelong learning. I wish I have a deck somewhere where we talk a little bit about our purview. So I'm going to cheat for a minute because I have a resource right in front of me, which is a handy thing to have. But we really talk about preparing for folks, onboarding our new folks from day 0 to 45. So establishing the foundation for success in the role. But then post day 45 is that engagement, deepening connections to the company mission and value. So those check-ins, both with managers, of course, but skip levels and that engagement, recognition of early wins, areas for growth and development that can be identified quickly. And then that should really be a smooth handoff to ongoing development. So promoting that long-term employee satisfaction and retention. And so it all starts with onboarding, and how do we make that as seamless as possible? So again, us rolling back after those first 5 weeks, again, our live sessions are really concentrated from a corporate perspective to our onboarding cohorts first week, but still having reminders, newsletters, engagements, e-learnings that might be sent at day 30, because that's when they are going to be setting their goals for the half, for example. We're not going to assign that to them in their first week.
Awesome. Thanks again. Yeah, just for spelling out kind of the cadence and the sequence there. Last question, for a one-person team, what are your best tips for efficient creation of microlearning content? And we will end our Q&A with that.
AI is your brainstorming buddy. It's asking the questions. It's that whiteboarding. It's really use AI. There's a lot that you can then quickly translate. A number of our learning tools that exist now have AI built in, where you again can give just very high level concepts and it will build out what they're a starting point for you. So AI is my answer for a one-person team. And again, we have more than one person on my team, and we are still leveraging AI and being encouraged to really lean on that.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, JJ, thank you again for your time, your expertise, your willingness to share some concrete examples for the folks who joined us today. For all of you who tuned in, thank you so much for joining us. You can join us again next month. Our Art and Science of Learning series takes place every first Thursday of the month. So we hope to see you next time. And thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.